Did you know you can just do stuff? Yeah, they told you to wait. Wait for the right moment. Wait for the right people to be in charge. Wait until it feels right. Wait till you have it all together. But men of God wait on one thing, the Lord. And if God is for you, who can stand against you? Today, I sit down with A.D. Robles to talk about why it's time to stop making excuses and start taking action. Brothers, you already have everything you need. You can just do stuff. Will you? So join me as we build, fight, protect, and lead. This is the Patriarchy.
Rise up, for men of God have done with lesser.
Rise up, for men of God have done with lesser things. Give heart and mind and soul and strength and serve the King of Kings. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where His feet have trod. As brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God.
Welcome back to the Patriarchy Podcast. It's good to be with you today. I have somebody that I think will be very helpful. I heard he is very, very reasonable. And so please welcome to the Patriarchy Podcast. I think this is your second time, actually. You did it years ago. A.D. Robles, welcome.
Well, I am glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me again. I appreciate it. You want me to introduce myself?
Yeah, dude, tell us, you used to be a pastor and you're a podcaster, then you're a headhunter. Tell us what that means. And it doesn't mean like you're this like headhunting Puerto Rican going around killing people, I don't think.
So, I mean, I've actually been a headhunter the whole time. So, I started online. At the time, I was pastoring a very small church. And the reason I didn't start podcasting to become a podcaster full time or anything like that. I didn't want to be a social media influencer, although technically I guess I am, which pains me to say. But basically, I started talking about the woke stuff before a lot of people did. There were some other people doing it at the time, but I just noticed a lot of very imbalanced takes about Donald Trump. And I didn't vote for Donald Trump at the time that I noticed this, but I did see some crazy things about racism and all this kind of stuff. And I just started.
So you didn't vote for Donald Trump?
I did this past time, but not the first time. Not the first time.
I didn't do it the first time either.
Right. So, but even though I didn't, I started seeing people say crazy stuff about him in particular, but also just mostly the people that were voting for him, because I knew a lot of those people, and I knew that they didn't hate black people or anything like that. So I started putting some mild criticisms of various evangelical leaders. I didn't get too much traction until the MLK 50 conference, when everybody was singing the praises of Martin Luther King. And I had a slightly different perspective, and that's kind of when the YouTube channels took off the first time. And so I became known as like the anti-woke church guy for a while. It was fun. I enjoyed doing the content, so I just kept doing it. Now I don't do as much on the woke stuff, but I'm still kind of in that same vibe.
Cool, man. And so you've been doing also the headhunting stuff. What is that? Tell us a little bit, because that's more of we're actually not going to talk about woke stuff today.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
So the headhunting, So that's been my profession since I graduated college. And what happens with that is basically companies will hire me to find hard to find talent resources. Mostly what I do is in technology. So if they have a software engineering need for their team, sometimes it's hard to find those people. And even if it's not hard to find them, sometimes it's hard to find the best ones and to attract them and to acquire them. And so basically I do work in that space. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And that's my business. That's where I make my money. I don't make money on the podcast. I mean, a little bit here and there, but that's where I make my money basically.
Is that your own business?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So I used to do it for a big corporation for 10 years or so. And when I became a pastor, I left that, of course, and then I just thought, hey, it'd be nice to make a little income on the side. And so I, tried to find some of my own clients, and I was able to do that. And ever since then, I've been doing it for myself, and it's been a lot of fun. What's great about it is that you don't need a lot of resources to start doing this. I mean, you basically need an internet connection, a phone, stuff like that, basic stuff. And it's my job is on the phone and on video calls, and that's it. I don't have to go anywhere, and I can make some money doing it. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, we'll probably come back to that at some point because I know that played into the thing we're going to be talking about. But recently, you were at I'm really close friends with Pastor Jerry Doris in Shelbyville, and they have this thing called the War Room. They do it I think once a quarter or something, and it's a discussion for men. You came with John Harris, and I think the overall theme was don't waste the win. Donald Trump has won the election. We have some good conservative headwinds going about us. And the woke stuff is actually, if you would, put kind of toxic right now to even be associated with. And so we don't want to waste that time. And you gave a talk called You Can Just Do Things. And I just love just the title alone. I could have maybe just went around and do that.
Yeah.
And so tell us about why you chose that topic, and then let's dive into that because that's really what I want to encourage our listeners with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the reason I chose that topic is because you're so right. I mean, there's definitely a vibe shift that's happened, especially amongst conservatives right now. And, we kind of have this feeling that, Donald Trump, I mean, he can almost do anything. He's got these nominees for these key positions. And every single time we think, they're going to run the same play that always stops our nominees from getting confirmed, they just don't stop. They just keep getting confirmed and keep getting confirmed. And he's got these executive orders, which who knows what the reality of that stuff is, but it's just it just seems like he's just taking all kinds of action. And again, we'll see what the results are, but that's the vibe that we're getting. There's just he's in there now. It seems like he learned some of the lessons from the last time. Maybe not, but he's making moves. Basically, is what it is. And it just seems like there's so much possible that people are excited. And so the purpose for my talk is that's all great and all. Politics is great, whatever. We got to get our leaders in there and they can make some moves. That's all possible and it's all important. But at the end of the day, in order for this vibe shift to not just fizzle out into nothing, we've got to make moves as well. And that doesn't mean that we're all going to be appointed to be the Secretary of Defense or we're all going to be in politics. Most of us aren't. But all of us have talents and abilities that God gave us that we can use to advance the causes and the missions that we care about. And we can just do it. And that's why I wanted to give that talk, because we can't just leave it to the politicians. We've tried that strategy too many times. And as good as I think Trump has been, he's just a guy. And, you can't just trust, you can't trust in princes and kings to do the things that we need to get done. There's so much opportunity out there, and you can do some things too.
Yeah, I'm preaching through 2 Samuel right now. And so, the story of Abner, which was Saul's uncle or cousin. Yeah. And when Saul dies, David should become king, and he makes this other guy king, Ishbosheth. And he basically starts civil war, and things don't go good for Saul's house. And eventually, even the puppet king that he puts in place turns on him. And then so Abner sees the writing on the wall, and he goes to David and switches sides. And it's not repentance because he was rebelling against God at the time. It's just political maneuvering. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've been telling our congregation, politics have its place. Political maneuvering has its place. We are, in one sense, watching a Abner type shift. People that were once borderline woke or would support woke stuff recognize, that's toxic. I got to get away from that now. But I don't know that there's actually real repentance in the hearts of these people. That sounds bad. On one hand, I don't care because I'm glad to see the things happen. On the other hand, I do care for their souls. but that's not enough. It wasn't enough for Abner. God didn't need Abner. David didn't need Abner. In fact, Joab kills Abner, and David still becomes the king. And so I think that's where we're at, and that's why I love your talk so much. Is that we have to capitalize on this time, and then we have to have faith to do that. Why don't you just give us a little bit more? Give us the 2-minute play-by-play of what your talk was.
Yeah, definitely. So because of what I do as a headhunter, I talk to leaders of companies all the time, CEOs, directors, VPs. That's just, I have to do that all day long in order to find, clients for me to do business with and all of that. And so I get a little bit of a window into the plans that people have and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish. I've made a concerted effort to find as many Christian businesses that I can align with. I'll still take the money of the pagans if they're not doing anything immoral, but at the end of the day, that's what I've been trying to do. The amount of talent out there amongst Christians is immense. I think of this all the time. Like just the other day, I saw somebody post something about how it's amazing to them that God put all of these materials into the dirt, and we've now figured out a way to turn it into a computer or a cell phone. You know what I mean? Like all the raw materials were there, put there by God, and we now make it into these tremendous machines and things that do all kinds of great stuff for us. But also, you got to think of it this way. Like, not only did he put the materials in the dirt, but he also gave people the ability to figure them out and find them and to use them, the talent to be able to combine all kinds of different things. Like, he put that in all of us. And in Christians in particular, hold on one second.
While he's leaning back, let me tell you about It's Good to Be a Boy book you can buy from Amazon.com.
Anyway, so he gave us all this talent, and there's just so many just massively talented people out there, and it's in all sectors. It's like software engineers, it's like construction people, it's mining, it's things that you couldn't even imagine. Like there's a Christian brother in California who's trying to build a machine that will turn material in the air, like the air that we breathe, and turn it into energy through nuclear fission, I think it is. Anyway, so we've got to recognize that in ourselves. Like, I'm not going to be splitting any atoms anytime soon. That's not my talent. But we all have talents, and we should figure out how to leverage those to advance the kingdom of God in not only for like the eternity future, but also what we've got going on here and now. You're so right that, to that story you told about Abner and all that, the political maneuvering that happens. This is happening all over the place. Like I talked to, a month ago, everyone said that diversity was our strength. We had to find, diverse candidates for them. Today, they're all saying, oh yeah, we're canceling all that. Like, we're totally merit-based. Mm-hmm. They didn't repent. They just did it because the vibe shifted. They're trying to de-risk their companies. And so what I would prefer, and I'm glad, perfect. Like that's what I was doing anyway. But what I want is for Christians to be able to grow businesses so that we don't even have to worry about that ever again, because we have not only competitive advantages through our talent, but also through the way we view the world. And so we can do that. And everybody, even I talked to somebody after my talk, Joseph, that kind of told me like he didn't feel like he had any marketable skills. And I talked to him for a few minutes, and he's a server right now, and he was telling me about that. And the thing is, like, servers do have marketable skills. You know what I mean? Like that's a job that really plays towards certain people skills and communication skills and customer service, and these are all marketable skills that can be utilized in so many different ways. We've got to really do evaluations on where we can kind of plug in. Maybe we're going to start a business, maybe we're not, but our talents can be used to advance all of this. And that's what my talk was about.
I go back to the title. It's catchy to me, and the whole talk with it, but you can just do things. In one sense, it just seems like it's permission to do good things
right.
for the Lord. You remember, was it William Carey that said, expect big things and attempt big things for God?
Yeah.
And so I grew up in a Christian home, and this is not to badmouth my home. I loved everything was great. I would be glad to relive it again. But one of the things that I think that can happen if we're not careful, even with our children, because as Christian parents, we're constantly teaching God's law. Like it's don't do that. Remember, there's
Yep.
a whole lot of no's, and we can build what's I would call a prohibitive conscience. You feel locked, unable to do things, like you don't have God's blessing to do things for the Lord, or you are beholden to other people's expectations, and there's just this like block. Well, I can't do things. I can't
Yeah.
do it,
Yeah.
and you might call it inertia, the fear of failure, whatever it is. I'm from Appalachia, and there's a whole lot of that kind of mindset just baked into our area. Like, well, I'll never get out of here. This is always a problem, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, what are so basically, I'm laid out a few, but you help me out. What are some of the things that keep Christians from thinking they can just do things?
Yeah, I think one big one, and it's hard to pinpoint this in a specific teaching because very few people actually explicitly teach this. But there is definitely a kind of an aura or a vibe against having the ambition to make money, really. And when you're going into business, obviously you're doing it to make money, and so it's not that there's a teaching that's been out there that's against making money, but it's almost viewed as kind of like a dirty thing, or like if you're looking to make money, then you're going to fall into the temptation into greed, right? And it's easy to see why this happens. I mean, there are people that make a lot of money that are very greedy. I mean, that exists obviously, but I think that that if you read the Bible and try to look at how the Bible does talk about money and resources and all these things. These are blessings. They are blessings that you can get. And you have to work at them. And the Bible talks about how you work at them. You know, you acquire little by little, you grow little by little. Obviously, you know, you give to the Lord as well. You give to the poor, you know, you're compassionate with your money, you're generous. There's all kinds of different ways that it talks about money, but it doesn't talk about money as a dirty thing that you shouldn't be concerned with. And so not only are you allowed to go into business to get a profit, you know, to get a gain from it, but you're also allowed to plan to get a big gain out of it if you want to. Some people don't want that. You know, some people, you know, they're not interested in that. And I think for the most part, that's fine. But if you want to go into business and you want to go into big business, right? You want to turn your restaurant into a chain and you want to go into big business and make a lot of money. You can just do that. You can just do that. And you can do that in a godly way. You don't have to give into the temptation to greed. You can just do things, Joseph, but you can also just not do things, right? There is a godly way to be rich. There's a godly way to pursue successful business. And I think that more and more Christians are waking up to this fact. And I mean, I in the talk, I said, can you imagine like what the possibilities would be if we had like Amazon was actually run by Christians and operated like a Christian business? The amount of things that we could do with that kind of resource pool, that kind of capital would be immense. It would be amazing. And that could be very good. Now, obviously, God doesn't need that stuff to do his work. We know that. But imagine what we could do with it. You know, anyway, so that's part of what I think holds people back. There's just sort of this like general sense that money is too risky. It's too risky to be pursuing large deals and big business. Like you're going to fall into temptation. That temptation's there, but the Bible, when it speaks about money, it warns against that temptation, but it does not say that the money in itself is just too risky for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we have to always keep in our minds God's no and God's yes. And
Yeah.
it's very easy to just get into his no. and because the Ten Commandments have prohibitions, right? So thou shalt not steal. But I love that the Westminster Confession of Faith, you're a Presbyterian, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, making sure we're on the same page, same team.
Yes.
Where the larger catechism, when it explains the eighth commandment, talks about not stealing, not greed, coveting, but it also talks about doing good for your business. In a sense, I can't remember the exact wording. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but it does talk about taking care of your own affairs and improving your own affairs and the affairs of your neighbors, caring for their estates. And we got to have both. And it's not just with money. I think it's with a lot of things. There's the warning in Scripture, not everybody should be a teacher, right? Because with great power comes great responsibility type thing. And, but it doesn't end there. Otherwise we have no teachers. It also tells you it's a good ambition. It's a good ambition to have, to want to be a teacher in the church and to lead God's people. And I think,
So on the one hand, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to strive for. It's a good ambition, but on the other hand, there is a risk there. So is the Scripture pushing you towards that risk? I mean, in a sense, it is, but there's a way to be a teacher that doesn't automatically lead to the worst case scenario, right? So we got to know ourselves a little bit, and I think sometimes it's helpful to have other people to talk to you about yourself and your own tendencies to know kind of if it's something that I should be striving for or not,
Yeah, I think one of the dangers that people walk away with what we're talking about is this: well, you can just do stuff means you can become the president right now. We tell our kids that they could if they did all the work required to become it, right? And God's providence was there, and that's a lot of this. So you can just do stuff. And that means you also have to do the work to do the stuff. And you have to have God's care with you. But the good news is that God is for us, not against us. And I think that's very helpful.
We know this. Like one of my wife's brothers, ever since he was a kid, said he wanted to be a fighter pilot. I mean, what kid doesn't say that, right? They want to be a fighter pilot. But the thing is with this kid, he was a special kind of kid where he became, very driven to be a fighter pilot. And so he worked every day to become a fighter pilot. And now he's a fighter pilot. But it wasn't like an automatic, like, oh, I just want to do it, I'll do it. No, like he actually had to think about the things he needed to do, how he needed to train himself, how he needed to set up to become in a position to be a fighter pilot. And then, of course, Providence had to be there as well, because, as we know, if you're colorblind, you can't be a fighter pilot, like stuff like that. So like, yes, obviously Providence is going to play a key part here. But yeah, you can just do things but you can just work at it too. That's the key.
Boys aren't broken girls, but today they're treated like they are. Schools, media, and culture tell them to sit down, be quiet, and stop being boys. But masculinity isn't toxic. It's good, and our sons need to know it. That's why I wrote It's Good to Be a Boy, a book designed to teach young boys the truth about God's purpose for them, to build, to provide, to protect, to fight, to lead, to worship, and to proclaim. Fathers, this is the book your sons need. Read it with them. Teach them, show them, because the world won't. It's Good to Be a Boy is available now on Amazon and online retailers. Get your copy today. It's time to raise up men. Buy It's Good to Be a Boy now.
Do it.
Link in the description.
And there was I know you said that you don't care about the internet drama, and I'm not going to go into it too much, but there's this controversy online about someone who was living a fake life. They presented themselves in a completely fake way. What's so intriguing to me about that is the fake life that they portrayed could actually be attained. It wasn't like wildly like crazy. Like it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm married to the president of Norway. Like it wasn't like totally like outlandish. It was a simple life. It was a good, very simple life. And you can actually do that if you worked at it, right? You have the skill set to do it. You've got the personality and the ability and the resources to do the life that you pretended to do. But it does take work. Like, you actually have to work towards that end.
Yeah. So how do you help people overcome inertia with this? Maybe they're feeling paralyzed by the fear of failure or the unknown.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
What do you have? They're hesitant to step out.
Yeah, there's two things that I would say right away. The first thing is to get over it. you gotta get over the fear of failure, because this is the best part about starting out, right? When I start out at a project that I'm going to do, or I'm going to try to do business with a certain company that I've never talked to before, and that's going to involve like some cold calling and stuff like that, and some different strategies. The best part about being small is that I could just try things, and if they don't work, I try something else, and if that doesn't work, I try something else. Like, you can just try anything you want, and see what works for you. Play to your strengths. Like, for me, I'm really terrible at certain things like writing, and so I don't send a lot of emails like to prospects, because I'm not good at it. But what I am good at is I'm good at like verbal communication. So what I've done is I've started dropping voice messages onto their like LinkedIn profile and stuff, and I can communicate myself, my value proposition much easier that way. Anyway, that's the first thing. Just get over it. Failure is kind of baked into the cake sometimes, and it's all part of the program. The second thing, though, that's more actionable than get over it, because that's hard to do, is talk to people in your local community, right? So this is going to be your church, this is going to be your family, this is going to be your friends, people that you hang out with, and talk to them about talk to them about them, right? Talk to them about their skills and what they do for work, and be genuinely interested in what's going on around you, right? Because chances are there's so much talent in your church that you don't know about because you don't ask about. Because when you get to church, you typically talk about, the Lord and what you learned in Sunday school and your kids and stuff like that. But get to know the people in your church, get to know the people in your community. And chances are, people that are accountants, people that are, software engineers, farmers, all kinds of different things. Just through talking about this kind of stuff, I think opportunities will start to present themselves. I remember I was talking to a buddy at church about, he was like really interested in starting like a meat farm, right? And we never went anywhere with this, but I had asked him about what's stopping you from doing that? Like, why don't you just do it? And there were some capital issues that he had, like he had to buy a certain thing. And I asked him, I said, hey man, like, I've got some capital. What if we potentially, I would, maybe give you a loan or, buy this thing for you and we can kind of go in together. We never did it, because, whatever, life happens. Not every opportunity is going to be, go forward. But I would never have known if I didn't talk to him, right? And so chances are some people at your church already own businesses and maybe could use someone with your skill set. But you're going to have to talk to people. And that sometimes that's uncomfortable for people, but you should do it, because that's how they used to do in the old days. They talked to people, they figured out what everyone was doing. You'd get involved with some things and make some moves. And sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. But we just got to have like some old fashioned community,
What would you tell somebody who's like, well, I don't know what to do? Like you said, you had somebody say, oh, I don't know what skills I got. And so I think it's similar to the advice you just gave, but I don't know what to do. I want to do something for the Lord.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple things that you could do. Number one, start with what you're currently doing, right? Like, what are you currently doing? With your time. And most of you have jobs. So what do you do for a job right now? This reminds me of people that want to get healthy, they want to get fit, and they want to know like, what new equipment should I buy to get fit? And they do this every couple of years or so. And to me, like, the answer is like, well, what equipment do you already have? Right? Start with the stuff that you already have. And we can talk about how to use that to get your goals. So here's a practice that I think is worthwhile to do if you're wondering how I could work for the Lord. This sounds hokey, this sounds weird, but I would list your own, like, think about yourself and it's hard to do this sometimes because, we'd like to talk about ourselves, but we don't necessarily like to think about ourselves too much. List your strengths and weaknesses and just list them out. I think you might be surprised at how many things you think are strengths that you currently already have, right? And then, I think sometimes opportunities will present themselves just by doing that, just listing out what you do good, what you do well, and what you're not so good at. But then also kind of do the same exercise and think about, again, the people that you know and what their strengths are and things like that. And then you could even go, if you wanted to, you could even go to something like Chat GPT and put in your skills, put in your attributes that you're good at, and try to get a list of things that you could do, like job titles that might be good for you. That this is all just brainstorming. Chat GPT can't tell you what to do, obviously, but it can give you some ideas, right? And so this doesn't have to be complicated, right? You could work as a blue collar, like a contractor or something like that, and make massive amounts of money. You could even grow a business that way. And maybe if you're a contractor, you're not good with numbers, you're not good with like the financial side of it, with all that stuff. Well, maybe you bring somebody in that can do some of that stuff for you. You know what I mean? I'm terrible at numbers, right? So if I have an issue, I outsource that. Like I talk to somebody else about that stuff. I'm not good at that side of the business. In fact, that's what I do right now. Like when it comes to the legal agreements and financial collections and stuff like that, I outsource all that because I'm terrible at it. I'm not good at it. It takes too much time and I'm not good at it. So I outsource that. And so you what you do is you focus on the things you're good at, and then the things you're not good at, how can I outsource it? And it doesn't have to be for money. It could be, partnerships or things like that. Or even people at church are willing to help you just for no reason, because they want to help. I would do that. I really would. It sounds so cheesy and corny, but list it out, because God has given all of us skills, all of us. It doesn't matter how invaluable you think they are. They're more valuable than you think they are.
I actually really agree with that. I think this principle also applies beyond just the business world as well. You can do things like get married, have children. You can talk to that girl that you wanted to talk to. It's
100%.
just what really is behind all this. Then is, in my opinion, is faith. And I think that's what separates it from godless, selfish ambition versus godly ambition is it's actually it's not about you. Like you can just do stuff, but it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about the one who's working in you. It's about your faith in God and faith that he's pleased with you. Like, if you never think God is pleased with you, then I don't know that you'll ever try to accomplish things for him. Why would you?
Joseph, that last point is so key, right? I think, cold calling is traditionally very nerve-wracking. People don't like doing it. People don't like rejection. People don't like that stuff. And I'm the same way. You know what I mean? And even speaking in public, most people don't like to do that. And honestly, I get anxiety about it every single time, right? And what I've learned over time is that anxiety doesn't necessarily ever go away, right? But you start to learn how to live with it, right? You start to learn how to live with it. And one thing that I always think about, in fact, I have a note on my computer every single day that basically reminds me that the Lord is with me. And, it's the verse, if the Lord is with us, who can be against us, right? And it's there's really the anxiety that I'm feeling about anything. Ultimately, that needs to be rejected as a lack of faith, right? That's a lack of trust that God is going to be I can trust God with the results of this, right? I remind myself of that literally every single day. And so that is so key to all of this, because could you imagine the powerhouse, again, Amazon, Google, Exxon, whatever, these big companies, McDonald's, imagine if they were run by Christians, owned by Christians, run in a Christian way, and they had the Lord on their side. I mean, imagine the amount of things that could happen with just that kind of stuff. We just kind of assume that these big giants, they have to be secular. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't.
I have a similar thing. Yours is more honorable. It's a Bible verse, but mine's right behind me right here. Is John Wayne. Whenever it's courage is being scared to death and getting up on your horse and saddling anyways. And
I like
I
it.
love that. I think about that quite a bit. Like as a pastor, sometimes you got to tell somebody something, it's going to make them mad. They don't even like it. It's like, all right, get on the horse. It's got to do it anyways.
Yeah.
If you love God. And it's the same kind of deal. Like just get on your horse and ride. I have found actually that most people that you run into in this world are scared to death too.
Oh yeah.
Even the big alpha guys that act like they're not, they are. And if you just have some confidence in the Lord, I mean, that's more alpha than anything, right? Because we have God on our side, and you can serve Him, you can attempt great things for Him, and then you can just sit back and watch Him do it.
Yeah.
Do you have any personal anecdotes about that? Something that where you had to have faith, and you stepped out in faith, and you just did it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nothing like that's like super dramatic, I would say. But I do think that as I look back on my life, right, and the different times where there was anxiety over anything, but especially things like money or like business related and stuff like that. Looking back, I can always see the things that God has organized and done that really kind of carried me through these times when I didn't understand what the heck was going on. There's one example that I can give right off the top of my head. So it was right when I quit my job at the corporation I worked at, and I was doing an unpaid like pastoral internship. So I was not getting paid, and I didn't have any income whatsoever. I had planned for this, and then like after I finished that, I was doing a job where it was really up and down. Like, yeah, I just started my own business. So some months were really good. Some months were really bad. Right. And so my wife was pregnant. So I was super worried about that. Right. Because the feast and famine, of a business cycle, me and her could get by, no problem, whatever. But after the kid was born, like now we've got a third person here that I'm responsible for. It's real crazy. I don't have insurance anymore. So like, I'm not going to be able to pay for this birth and stuff like that. There was 3 months in a row that I had done $0 in billing. I had made no money for 3 months in a row. So I was stressed. So then we talked to the hospital, and it's one of these hospitals that they get all kinds of grants from rich people and stuff like that. And they say, hey, do you have insurance? No, we don't have insurance. And they say, okay, well, fill out this form, and we'll see if we can get you a discount, right, on the birth. And I was like, okay, great. So it asks me, what's your salary for the last 3 months? And it's like, it's zero, right? But I'm like, I felt really bad about it because like, it's not going to be zero. Like I'm going to make money. So like, I felt bad. And so I called them up and I said, hey, a question about this form. I didn't make any money the last 3 months, but I'm going to be making money. Like, so like, is it okay? Like, I don't want to like abuse the system. And they were like, oh, no. It's all about these 3 months. We don't care about anything else. You could make $200,000. It's just the last 3 months. And I was like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah. So we filled out the form and they go, oh yeah, you know what? The birth will be free. We're not going to charge you at all. And it's like stuff like that. It's like, I'm stressed out to no end. And God like orchestrated this weird thing where I'm like not making money, but actually it benefited me even more so than it would have if I was making money.
Yeah.
Because it's, births are very expensive, as you know. And like, I wasn't going to make enough to cover the birth in those 3 months probably. And so it was just amazing. Like, and there's so many stories like that where I can look back and be like, man, like that really worked out. Or a client I didn't get. And then it turns out that the client, the company goes bankrupt and doesn't pay their bills. I would have been one of those bills, right? Like I was all upset I didn't get this deal, but I wouldn't have been paid anyway. Stuff like that.
The Lord is very kind when we just operate in faith, even when we are faithless, man. Like even when we're weak. I always tell this story. I'm sure my listeners have heard it before. I'm telling it again because I don't know if you've heard it. But when I was in seminary, I was working a full-time job and was going to seminary. But paycheck was 2 weeks off. Bills were due 2 or 3 days. And bank account did not have, I could get maybe a Happy Meal. And so my wife and I were laying in bed, and just like there was something that came out and caused us to be low on money. And we were just like, I don't know what we're going to do. And we're stressing. And finally I just said, hey, let's just go to bed. Let's go to bed. God's going to provide.
Yeah.
And that's something I say quite frequently. And I believe it. But it could at times sound hokey or jingoistic or something.
Yeah.
And so my wife, and she goes, yeah, right. Like there's going to be a check in the mail tomorrow.
I can see where this is going.
You know where it's going. So we go to bed. I get up. I have to walk past our mailbox on the way to class. I check my mailbox, and there's an envelope from a lady from my home church in West Virginia. I open it up, and sure enough, a check that covered all of our bills. And this lady just sent it randomly. She just thought, I'd like to bless this people in seminary with some money.
Yeah.
And that check actually has fed us way beyond the amount of money on that check. And what I mean by it is it's given us faith to plant a church when we didn't know we were going to be able how to do that and everything else. And so,
yeah. And just to be totally clear, it doesn't always have to be something like super like in your face like that. Like there have been times in my business where I've made a lot of money, like way more than I had any business making. And I've done the diligent thing, and I didn't spend it all. I saved it, and all that. And then I'll go through 6 months where it's really hard. You know what I mean? I'm actually going through a period of that, like coming out of a period like that. This past year. This past year was very difficult business wise, but God provided in that a couple years ago. I did extremely well, and I didn't do anything stupid with the money. I kept it, and so like now we're taken care of, even if the market doesn't turn. Right? You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. So yeah, there's just been so many examples of that, and so my advice is to get over yourself. Don't worry about, failing, because that's part of it. That's always part of it. I mean, there's so many examples from the Bible and from history where we see people, beat their head against the wall again and again. It seems like a failure, but it's not. You know what I mean? So anyway, there's that. And then we're just going to have to get out of our comfort zones a little bit and talk to people. That's what we got to do. Talk to people, because chances are, I don't know your churches, obviously, I'm not omniscient, but every church that has, I don't know, between 50 and 100 people, there's so much talent there. There's so much ability there. There's so much resources there. You couldn't even imagine. So figure out what they are. And then you can make some moves and do some things.
well, hey, brother, this has been, again, encouraging to me. If somebody wanted to connect with you, follow up on your work, where do they find you at?
You can find me on X, 80 Robles Media. I'm on YouTube as well, 80 Robles. And I've been trying to get people to connect with me on LinkedIn as well, which is kind of a business social media site. And it's been great because I've been able to see talent in all kinds of different spaces. You never know when there's going to be something that we can work together with. So you can, my name is there. It's not 80 Robles. It's Adam Robles on LinkedIn. So connect with me there.
Brother, listen to me. God is for you. Not the self-help gurus, not the politicians, not the culture, but the living God, your creator, your redeemer, your king. And when God is for you, no one can stand against you. He made you to be fruitful and multiply. He made you to take dominion. He redeemed you from lawlessness so that you could serve him in faith, so that you could build, so that you could fight, so that you could lead. That might mean starting a business. On the other hand, it might mean simply working faithfully for your employer, building up the work there with integrity. It might mean stepping up as a husband and a father, having more children, disciplining your children, leading your wife in strength and love. It might mean walking across the church, shaking a father's hand, and then asking for his daughters. It might mean finally writing that book, starting that ministry, taking that leap you've been afraid to take. But whatever it is, you must act in faith. Because only faith pleases the Lord. And faith moves. Faith works. Faith steps out when the path isn't clear, but the call of God is. Now, make no mistake, selfish ambition leads to destruction. I'm not calling you to that, but to godly ambition. And that's required. God requires us to have godly ambition. And that's because godly ambition is driven by love. Love for God, love for your family, love for the church, for the brotherhood. Right? It's not about chasing status or riches. Money is just a tool. It's a tool you're free to make use of for God's glory, for sure. Because there is freedom in Christ. Freedom to obey, freedom to serve, freedom to do things God made you to do. And brother, it's great. It's freeing. God made you to be a man, and men do things. And when his sons rise up and act in faith, God is pleased. So what are you waiting for? It's time to step up. It's time to move. You can just do things. Now, if this episode encouraged you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, subscribe, share it, send it to the men who need to hear this. Please leave us a review, like on Apple or Spotify. Every single one of those helps get this message out. And then get out there and do something. Go do stuff. Be strong in your body, in your heart, and your mind for the King and his kingdom. And build, fight, protect, and lead. This is the patriarchy.